Hey guys, Aaron Kubitz, personal trainer, functional aesthetic CC, helping average guys perform better inside and outside the gym. So, a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle, and if I want to get bigger, that means that I need to lift as heavy as possible all the time, right? Well, yes and no. And I'm going to explain why here in a little bit. So, it would kind of make sense, right? That, you know, if a lot of one of the reasons that a lot of guys go to the gym is because they want to be bigger, stronger, more imposing, that kind of stuff, right? And we would think it just kind of makes sense that if you're bigger, you're going to be able to move more weight. And so if you want to get bigger, you should also be moving more weight. But if you look at the science, it's actually, although lifting heavy weight is a part of growing muscles bigger, there's actually, 5 or 6 different factors involved in muscle growth. It is not the most significant factor. In fact, volume and time under tension are actually much more important than the amount of weight that you're lifting. So if you go in there and you're just lifting as heavy as you can all the time, you're actually shortcutting yourself in terms of long-term muscle growth, as well as long-term strength gains. So when we talk about volume is the total amount of weight that you're lifting in a workout, and is the product of the amount of weight that you have on the bar times the amount of sets that you're doing and times the amount of reps that are in those sets. And I remember from my earlier days lifting that although the amount of weight that I was lifting that was on the bar was less than it is now, my total training volume, or the amount of work, the amount of weight that I was lifting in a single workout, was much higher. I had different goals, right? And so keep that in mind. The other one is the time under tension, right? And so how they're related is that, like, if I back up here a little bit before going to the time under tension one, so a lot of times the power lifters will spend some time doing some bodybuilding and cycle back and forth between raw strength training and bodybuilding style training, right? Because if you have a bigger muscle, it's going to have more potential for strength, although it doesn't scale directly with increases in muscle size. If you double the size of your muscle, it doesn't mean that you're going to be twice as strong. You're going to be stronger, you're going to have more potential, you're going to have more leverage to move the weight, but you're not going to be twice as strong. And there's a bunch of other factors as well involved, but in the purpose of this video, we're talking about building muscle, right? And that strength isn't the biggest thing. So a lot of times the power lifters, they will cycle back and forth because they know that I need to build up at least a base of some amount of size. But after a certain point, coming to that time under tension principle I was talking about, a lot of times when you lift the weight, so for example, you're doing a deadlift, you lift the weight to the top and they'll just drop the weight back to the floor, right? And the reason they're doing this is because when you're lowering the weight back to the floor, that eccentric portion of the lift is adding more time under tension, thus more stimulus for hypertrophy or muscle growth. And after they built a decent amount of size, they don't want to be getting any bigger, right? Because with most athletes, what your goal is to achieve the ideal ratio of size to strength, right? At a certain point, getting bigger is not going to add appreciably more strength. That it's going, like, your strength to weight ratio is not going to be as great as it was at like a lower weight. And so you'll be in a heavier weight class, and you won't be lifting proportionally more weight, so it would make more sense for you to be in a lower weight class and try to just increase your strength without increasing muscle mass. And that is why they just be dropping that bar, because they don't want to increase the time under tension. So there's a variety of rep ranges that you can build muscle in. You can build muscle in with lifting 20 to 30 reps per set, and you can also build muscle lifting, 3 to 5 reps per set. But the reason why, usually when they talk about building muscle, that the recommendation is usually somewhere in that 8 to 12 repetitions is because it's just more efficient, and also psychologically it just feels better, right? If you're doing a set where you're doing like 20 or 30 reps, you probably get really bored on the way to doing that, right? And it doesn't feel psychologically as good as moving heavier weight, right? On the other end of things, if you're lifting in the 3 to 5 rep range, you could have a really long workout because you'd have to do so many sets to accumulate enough training volume, and you'd also have to rest for longer periods of time in between sets so that you'd be rested up enough to do that high level of intensity, lifting those heavier weights, so that the workout would just take too long for most people, right? And so usually we pick out this sweet spot right in the middle, okay? So, in the summary, and the other thing is that rep ranges matter, but you also need to be eating in a manner that's going to allow you to train at the volume that you plan on doing. One of the reasons that my training volume currently is much lower than it used to be is because of my training goals are different, right? I'm trying to just kind of maintain where I'm at while I'm working on other life goals. And so if I want to increase my training volume, I also have to increase total amount of calories so that I can get through that workout at a higher level of intensity. And so it's not good enough to just say, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of reps, right? And if you don't have sufficient fuel in the tank to perform those reps at a high level of intensity. So you also want to keep that in mind as well. Now, the final point that I want to make is that you also don't want to be sacrificing your form. We hear about this all the time in the gym though, right? Where you don't want somebody like cat backing a deadlift or something like that. But the real reason you want to do this is like, so for example, if you're doing chin-ups, you want to come all the way down and let your arms lock out at the bottom, allow your shoulder girdle to relax, and then contract everything and pull it all the way back up to the top. And then instead of sacrificing your form when you're not able to pull yourself up, when you get to that mid-range or something, stop for a minute, struggle at the halfway point of the rep while keeping your form good, and then just relax and come back down to the bottom. If you are compromising your form to get more reps, yeah, you might be able to move more weight from point A to point B in the short term, but in the long term, you're sacrificing muscle and strength gains because you're not training the appropriate muscles, because you're compensating the form, and now it's offloading that weight onto other muscles that aren't the target muscles of that exercise, and you're also offloading more weight onto your joints. So you're weakening your structural integrity, and you're not doing the intended point of the exercise, which is to stress the muscle out, create more tension in the muscle, and put more total weight and more total volume on that muscle over the course of the workout. So that's all I got to say today in terms of the fifth training mistake that people make, which is prioritizing the amount of weight they're moving versus the total amount of volume, which is the amount of weight that's on the bar times the amount of sets times the amount of reps that are in those sets, which accumulates the total amount of weight that you're moving in the workout versus the total amount of weight that you're moving for a couple of reps. And the second one, which is time under tension. And that was early in the video where I talked about how a power lifter, once he's reached his goal weight where he's got the optimal amount of strength to weight ratio for a given weight class for his genetics and stuff, he's no longer focused on building more muscle. He wants to focus on maximizing his strength at that weight class. And so often what they will do is when they lift the bar to the top of the movement, they will drop the bar from there instead of lowering it back down to the floor. And the reason they're doing that is not because their hands gave out necessarily. It's because when you lower that weight back down to the floor, that's increasing total amount of time under tension, thus increasing the amount of muscle building or hypertrophy response that you're getting from doing that lift. All right, guys, hope you found some value from the video. If you like it, hit that like button. We'll see you all next weekend.